Hey everybody, I just wanted to come back to you with another hopefully helpful video about some food and drinks and sleep today. Today's content is going to be about water, alcohol, and other beverages. We seem to get a lot of questions about how and if it's okay to kind of work in some drinks and then sleep, which I think is something we don't necessarily talk about too often, but is certainly a really important topic. Bear with me and, of course, ask any questions in the comments or anything like that as we go. So, about water. Water is really important for a bunch of reasons, but a couple of them being that it helps to dissolve proteins and move things around our body. So, in order for us to gain muscle mass or continue to function as humans, we need to move that protein around, and of course, water is going to help us do that. It brings nutrients to our cells and also carries away waste. That's literally how we get things to move around in our bodies. It helps to lubricate joints and acts as a shock absorber for the eyes and spinal cord. And it protects our body temperature, and that's why we sweat. If it's a very hot day, we get a little sweatier, right? Again, trying to keep ourselves cooler, which is why we get sweaty. Hydration also impacts the rate of recovery, our mood, our immune system health, and our metabolism. As just as an example, too, a 1% loss of our total body water can cause a 10 to 20% decrease in our performance abilities. So, if you think about the fact that we are about 55 to 60% water, that means like a 130-pound human is 72 pounds of water. So, if you lose 1% of that 72 pounds, right, that can cause as much as a 20% decrease in your performance or your ability to perform. Being hydrated is, of course, really important. A little bit of continued information about water. In terms of specifics, most adults need about 3 liters of water a day. The good news is that we get a lot of this from what we eat. So fruits and vegetables all have water content. Some of our meats and other proteins have water content. So we don't have to drink 3 liters of water necessarily. However, in general, that leaves about 2 liters or approximately 8 cups of water that we do need to drink. And that's after obviously absorbing it from our food. Drinking enough water is going to be important. And then obviously, some of us will need more or less water based on our size and how much we move or exercise. So if it's a particularly hot day, you might need more water. If it's not so hot or you didn't get as sweaty, you might need a little bit less. Equally, if you weigh 200 pounds versus if you weigh 130 pounds, you're going to need a little bit different water amounts. Right? Here's some other key indicators though. Our goal is mostly clear pee by noon, right? So maybe a kind of a funny indicator, but if you use this as your goal, right, that will indicate to you how hydrated you are. It's a good kind of easy way to judge if you're hydrated enough, right? Just a helpful idea, which I've been using a lot lately. But upon waking, if you have 12 ounces of water plus a little bit of sea salt and then juice from a lemon, like a freshly squeezed lemon, and in terms of the amount of sea salt, between 1 and 3 grams, kind of depending on how much you can handle taste-wise, is going to really help you to get back the hydration and the electrolytes that you've lost overnight, right? So when we sleep, our body's still processing, so we're still using the water in our system. And then equally, the electrolytes definitely get depleted when we sleep because we haven't eaten or drink anything. So these are, again, the important minerals that carry a charge and help process things in our body. So those get lost overnight, and this kind of quick 12 ounces of water can help us to replace some of that. And you want to do this before you have coffee, right? So as your first beverage in the morning, right? Depending on what's easy for you is I just kind of make this little drink for myself while I'm getting ready in the morning, and as I'm kind of running around and getting changed or whatever, just have a couple of sips and I'm done with that drink before I go to my breakfast or my coffee. So that's easy if you can do that. Cool. So alcohol and other beverages. Be careful about drinking too many calories, right? I think sometimes we look at beverages and think that they can't necessarily add up in terms of calories because they're liquid, right? However, lots of drinks have a lot of sugar, a lot of carbs. I'm going to show you that in a couple minutes. So be careful of that. A lot of the non-water beverages that we consume are high in sugar and can make us feel less hydrated and actually more tired because of the sugar content. The reality of alcohol usage is that our bodies will work to process and break down alcohol before any food in our system. So I think this is really important to know. So, in general, if you have a drink or, for example, a glass of wine with dinner every night, your body is essentially putting your meal on hold while it breaks down the alcohol. So while you're eating, your body's actually not yet digesting the food that it's eating, and instead you're focusing on breaking down the alcohol through your liver and then going through the rest of your system. I think equally for a lot of people with alcohol that gets tricky is that sometimes when we drink, we feel the need to pair those drinks with other foods, and that's where sometimes we start to go a little bit off of our plan in terms of our food choices. So certainly something to be careful of there. Just as a couple of examples, I wanted to include about different alcohol and other beverages, just so that we get an idea of what it is that we're having. So here we have two different beers, right? So we have a Sam Adams Boston Lager and then a Bud Light, both like 12-ounce bottles, but certainly a different calorie and carb content. While 18 carbs doesn't necessarily seem like a lot in that Sam Adams, if you're having, 4 or 5 of those over a day of heavy drinking, right? That can certainly add up those 100 extra carbs that you maybe aren't accounting for in your meal plan, right? So maybe a slightly lighter option could be this Bud Light, which is only 7 carbs. Certainly would still add up, but a little bit less, right? A red wine is actually a really kind of good choice if you were going to drink. The rules, though, about alcohol processing still apply. So just because it's a better choice doesn't necessarily mean that your body doesn't need to process the alcohol. So just keep that in mind. But a glass of wine, 4 or 5 ounces, is 4 grams of carbs. And just out of curiosity, next time you have a glass of wine, try to measure it out and see how much you're actually drinking in your glass based on or in comparison to what a serving is. And then we have a vodka tonic, which is about 200 calories total, and that's about 20 carbs. So, again, being careful to maybe not have too many of these. This would be similar to that Sam Adams. Not a horrible choice, but it certainly will add up. And then we have two non-alcoholic beverages to talk about. A Gatorade, right, is 140 calories, which maybe doesn't seem like a lot, but here we have to notice the sugar content. So of our 36 grams of carbs, 34 grams are sugars, which is huge, right? If we're trying to stay in a ballpark of about 80 to 100 grams of sugar in a day, if you're having one of these Gatorades, that's quite a few sugars that you're adding into your plan there. So definitely be mindful of that. Benefits to Gatorade could definitely include electrolytes and those things. So if you are dehydrated or you feel like you really need more electrolytes, certainly a Gatorade is a good option. But again, just being careful not to have that be a go-to beverage all the time. And then here we have like our fancy coffee, if you will, an iced caramel macchiato, a grande, which is a medium, right, is 250 calories, and again, 37 grams of carbs and 34 sugars, which is quite a few. Here we also have 7 grams of fat and 10 proteins, which obviously our proteins aren't necessarily bad, but if you're drinking all your fats and proteins and carbs and you're still eating all your proteins, fats, and carbs, that could certainly, again, add up there. So being careful with that. I actually think those measurements don't even include the whipped cream that is pictured here, so be careful with that too. All right, moving on to sleep now. Sleep is so important, and we need ideally 7 to 9 hours a night. That may seem like a lot, but let me kind of explain why sleep is so important, and then you can kind of give yourself a little bit of a test and see how much you're actually getting. We want to sleep in as dark of a room as possible. So as best as you can, right? Kind of trying to cover up like even little lights in the room or getting kind of darkening shades and stuff like that. So like if say your clock has a light that backlights it or something, that we want to try to decrease. Even like a night light or something like that that might be in your hallway or in the room is going to interfere with your sleep. Set yourself up for success before bed. So 30 to 60 minutes before bed, try to get away from your phone or electronics as best as possible. That has that backlight that can make you feel like you need to stay awake. And so being careful not to do too much on our phone right before bed. Try to set an alarm or a time that you need to start getting in bed. So if you have a certain goal of a number of hours of sleep and you know that that's going to set you back to going to sleep at 9 o'clock, then maybe at 8:30 you'll set an alarm at your phone so that you can start getting ready for bed or winding down or kind of wrapping up the activities that you might be doing so that you can be ready to actually get in bed at 9. Our goal is to wake up fewer than 1 to 2 times per night, right? Rolling over and falling back to sleep doesn't count as a wake up, but getting up to use a bathroom or laying around restlessly, that does count. So when we talk about how effective our sleep is, these 1 to 2 waking times is important to realize. So you might be in bed for 8 hours, but if you've gotten up 5 or 6 times to get a drink of water or go to the bathroom or whatever, that's not necessarily 8 hours of rest, right? So trying to be mindful of maybe how much you drink before bed, or if you do go to your phone, if you wake up at night, that's going to try to keep you up even more. So be careful with that. And then we want to try to wake up without an alarm as often as possible, even if it's just for a few days a week. So trying to give our bodies literally as much sleep as it needs, as best as possible or as often as possible, is huge. So why do we need good sleep, right? Or sleep in general? Good sleep helps us to control our weight and combat obesity. Our sleep cycles, so that's like your light sleep, dark sleep, REM sleep, or sorry, deep sleep, REM sleep, and a kind of awake time. As we cycle through those, that's going to help with physical recovery, and that's also going to impact your inflammation levels in your body. And also we continue to digest food and we're not eating when we sleep. So that will help us to kind of control our weight. Good sleep also helps to improve the immune system, again, helping with inflammation and kind of letting our system rest. Good sleep is vital for optimal mental function. Rest and relaxation of light and deep sleep will help with that, like literally letting your brain and your mind rest. Good sleep helps with physical performance. Anybody who's ever tried to get a good night's sleep before an event or a race or a competition of sorts, you know that having a good night's sleep will make you feel better during that. And then it will help you to recover in general, right? So that's like you had a hard workout, you need a good night's sleep. And I think this is really important and something that I'm certainly guilty of sometimes, but don't let people make you feel bad about spending time sleeping, right? If you're trying to get 8 hours and that causes you to wake up at 7 a.m. instead of 6, you're not wasting the day, right? You're trying to help yourself have a successful or as most successful of a day as you possibly can. So don't feel bad about trying to get good sleep. Other important things about sleep, negatives of not getting enough sleep, and I think this might help us to kind of convince ourselves that we need more sleep. Negatives of not getting enough sleep, the biggest one is probably an increased cortisol level. Cortisol is your body's main stress hormone. So literally when you're going through a stressful time in your life, your body is making cortisol. That like fight or flight type of like anxiety feeling that you get in a stressful situation, that's cortisol. So if you're not getting enough sleep, your body is making that. So you may not actually be in that type of stressful fight or flight type of situation, but your body is acting like it is. Cortisol also increases our body's blood sugar, which we don't necessarily want to happen. Equally, shift work, so like working and sleeping at different times in the day, has recently been equated to like a carcinogen, which is similar to like other cancer-causing agents, and that's just from not getting enough sleep or not getting regular sleep. Too little sleep also starts to break down our muscles, which we certainly don't want, because your body needs more energy, and that's where it's getting it from. So how can you get more sleep? Naps might be a good idea, but they're kind of tricky, so hear this out. Less than 30 minutes can be helpful. So if you have a little bit to just take a quick nap, that might be really helpful. More than 30 minutes, though, can actually make you feel worse. So in the like 30 minutes to 1 hour range, you might actually wake up feeling less awake than you were before. And that's kind of because you haven't let your body sleep through an entire cycle. So if you can get a full sleep cycle, which is approximately 90 minutes, then you can wake up feeling better and you can make up from lost sleep from the night before. So our full sleep cycle is light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep, and then you wake back up, right? And that's about 90 minutes long, which can help you make up from the night before. All right, so I think that's kind of it for today about beverages, water, and sleep. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'm happy to talk about more. Thanks.